the development that perhaps we were expecting, but nonetheless a momentous moment.
Yeah, we've been hearing for the last couple of days since this shooting on Saturday evening, Todd Blanche and Janine Pirro from the Justice Department both saying that they were expecting more charges to be filed against the 31-year-old suspect, Cole Thomas Allen. But this now is a significant development. The two weapons charges that he was originally going to be facing now basically superseded by this much more severe charge of attempting to assassinate the President of the United States. Now, this ultimately is a federal crime over a state, a local crime, which means that it effectively boosts up the severity of that crime and that punishment. It means basically that there is looking at a minimum, if he is indeed found guilty of this, of between 17 to 22 years. But judges do have the discretion here to then go higher than that if they want to, and indeed often they do indeed give life sentences as well. Bear in mind as well that this is still very early into the investigation. We could still see more charges potentially brought. The judge has ordered that Allen be held in custody until a sentencing hearing, which we have not got the date for yet. But this is going to be a very severe number of charges now that this man is facing, up from those weapons charges now into an attempted assassination charge on the President of the United States.
Fraser, tell us more about the reaction where you are to what happened on Saturday.
It's been universally kind of absorbed with horror and shock, to be honest. Of course, Donald Trump, this is his third attempt on his life. And of course, the manifesto that we've seen from this man said that he was looking to take out top Trump administration officials in order of priority. He did not actually name Donald Trump directly in that, but it has been shocking for many people. There, of course, were many members of the administration in that room, and it's raised questions about the level of security that that dinner was given. This was not the highest level of security that we see in events where a significant number of the line of succession for the US government are present, something like an inauguration, for example. It wasn't given that level of protection, but it has not been given that level of protection in the past either. But there are questions about whether the cordon around that ballroom was secure enough. Secret Service had control over the ballroom and the immediate perimeter, but it did not have control over the entirety of the hotel building. But Donald Trump is standing by Secret Service, saying he has full confidence in them, and the government is also saying that it has full confidence in the Secret Service, despite Democrats, for example, calling for an investigation into how this kind of thing could have happened.
Indeed, as you're saying that, Fraser, I'm sure you've seen these images more than I have. We see those CCTV images of the man who's now charged with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump running through security, which I'm sure you and I both think, well, hang on, if security is that tight, how does someone get to run through a barrier like that in such a way? It must be raising questions among certain people as to why this actually happened. And Donald Trump, among others, using this as an opportunity to push for his own ballroom project, which of course has come up against a federal judge who's blocked that development because Congress didn't give permission for that. Trump speaking to, among others, CBS News about this.
Yeah, and of course, Donald Trump spoke to us in the immediate aftermath of that. I was actually in that ballroom when it took place, so I heard those shots myself, and then since saw that footage. But Donald Trump, of course, was very quick to talk to the press after that. He said in the immediate aftermath of the shooting that he had full confidence in the Secret Service and in the law enforcement that was there. But then he gave more extended remarks in that interview on Sunday with Norah O'Donnell from CBS, where again he stood by Secret Service, but he also was asked about the manifesto that this 31-year-old had seemingly sent to some of his family in the moments before he committed this attack. And Donald Trump was asked about some of the language in that about sexual misconduct. Again, that language was not aimed directly at the president. He doesn't necessarily name Donald Trump in that, but Donald Trump very swiftly took against that, saying that he was not a rapist, he wasn't a pedophile, and that he had been caught up in this with no basis, effectively. Nora O'Donnell then pushed back, asking whether it was him that he thought the perpetrator was speaking about. Donald Trump then laid into Nora O'Donnell, calling her awful and terrible. So this was, a bit of a moment that we saw the grace period of Donald Trump towards the press slip, where he then went back to his attacks on the press. But Donald Trump says that he wants that night to be rearranged, a night that stands to celebrate the First Amendment, the freedom of the press. And Donald Trump says that it is something that needs to happen and that this shooter should not get his way and not scare people into not holding that kind of event again in the future.
Fraser, I know people watching this, knowing that you were there, would want to have your opinion, and it is your opinion, about how the security was getting into the site, into the premises, into the location where this black tie event was taking place. So I know you're not a security professional and nobody's judging you as such. Nonetheless, as an astute journalist who has his eyes open and is aware of what is needed and what is required, give us an assessment of how tight the security was.
You're right, I'm not a security expert, but I am somebody who has spent a lot of time around Secret Service, somebody who's been through a lot of Secret Service events for various different things, from the Democratic National Convention to the Republican National Convention to the inauguration. So I've been around that a lot. I obviously access the White House on an almost daily basis. Security did seem lax. Funnily enough, I did actually think to myself, when I was heading into the dinner, I was surprised at how close you could get to that ballroom without having been scanned by Secret Service in the immediate presence of that ballroom, because I thought there was going to be a harder outer perimeter around the building, but actually you just needed to flash a paper ticket to get through the kind of police cordon that was outside of the hotel. But of course, within the hotel itself, there are still many parties: CBS, Politico, Fox News, just some of the networks that were holding pre-parties in the building that anybody technically could have walked into. He could have walked into a very busy hallway with these weapons. If this attack had taken place 35 minutes earlier, it would have been a very different story to what we saw unfold on Saturday night. We were actually lucky that by the time the man decided to carry out this attack, most of the guests were already inside the ballroom and therefore had already passed through that outer ring of security, the magnetometer, the metal detector, to then head into the ballroom. But that was the only layer really of security. Some of the other events, you have to have, ID, you have to have been signed up, you have to have a QR code to get into these spaces. So, some of the events that have taken place in the days preceding this dinner in some ways had a stricter security than the actual dinner itself, because I did have to also go through metal detectors in some of those parties as well. So it was a bit interesting to me, and I did think that on the day that the security seemed a bit loose and you could get very close to the ballroom without having to go through any layer of security. But of course, the US Secret Service is saying that this was still a success and that the man only briefly breached that perimeter before he was ultimately taken down and neutralized before he managed to make it into the much harder perimeter of the actual ballroom itself.
Fraser Jackson, thank you, as ever, for bringing